I don't think that January 6th is the end of the story. I'm quite concerned about the activities that we'll see headed into the next presidential election cycle in particular.
On the second anniversary of the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol, experts are keeping a close watch on anti-government groups in the U.S. Dr. Amy Cooter is a senior research fellow at the Center for Terrorism, Extremism, and Counterterrorism at Middlebury University. She spent 3 years in the field with anti-government militia groups.
I grew up in rural East Tennessee with people who regularly use firearms for hunting and a variety of other purposes. I realized that that background was not one that I shared with most of my fellow academics. I first started doing research on militia groups in Michigan when I was a graduate student. I went to field days, training exercises, their public meetings, and other events. When I first attended the very first meeting, I could tell that militias weren't necessarily what the existing academic literature thought they were.
Let's go!
There are some groups on the more extreme end of the spectrum that can incorporate elements of racism into their group organization. Those groups tend to overlap some with some neo-Nazi ideology, and again, tend to be among the most violent, or at least the ones that we would expect the most violence from. The reality is, many people who are in militias are very normal people. People who have jobs, who have families, who if you met them on the street, you might not ever guess they were actually a militia member. And for me, that's important because militia members can kind of show us what other people who may be less vocal about their beliefs are really thinking about political currents and other things.
Around 2008, militia membership dramatically increased amidst economic concerns and the voting in of Barack Obama.
I accept your nomination for presidency of the United States.
50 active militia groups were tracked by the Anti-Defamation League in 2007. By late 2009, there were more than 200. While militia growth slowed in the years after the 2008 surge, experts saw another spike after the 2016 presidential election. In 2017, the number of armed militia groups rose 65% from 165 chapters to 273 chapters.
When President Trump ran for office, we saw something a little bit unusual with militia groups. Typically during Republican administrations, we can expect them to decline in size, but we saw the opposite with him. Instead of making them feel like their concerns about the economy or about immigration were taken care of, he made them feel like those concerns were legitimate and getting bigger.
We have problems, and we're going to solve our problems. We're going to be very, very smart. We're going to be very strong and tough, and we're going to be very vigilant. And we're going to...
I would say that over Trump's entire administration, we saw kind of the fervor or the urgency of militia groups amping up. So if you were watching Parler or Telegram or some of these other places, unfortunately what we saw on January 6th wasn't all that big of a surprise. I think it's important to recognize that these groups are complex, that they're not all the same.
Following January 6th, social media platforms like Facebook took action to ban anti-government militia groups who were organizing on their platform. Still, Cooter says this makes extremist groups harder to track.
They're still active on places like Parler and Telegram, but many of them have more closed groups than they used to or are meeting exclusively in person. We know as of right now that our best estimates of people who were involved in January 6th, the vast majority of folks were not actually formally affiliated with a militia or some other kind of group. So we really need to pay attention to some of not just those funneling processes to formal group, but how that ideology does map onto people we think of as being more normal.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.